Welcome to the Biotech Startups podcast by Exceeder. Join us as we speak with first-time founders, serial entrepreneurs, and experienced investors about the challenges and triumphs of running a biotech startup, from pre-seed to IPO, with your host, John Chi. In our last episode, Samir Khleif shared how growing up as a refugee shaped his worldview, why education was central to his family, and how early leadership experiences laid the groundwork for a future in science and medicine. If you missed it, check out part 1. In part 2, Samir picks up the story at the National Cancer Institute, where he bridged basic research and clinical care and discovered his calling as a clinician-scientist. He also shares how that mindset shaped his approach to translational medicine and set the stage for building a world-class cancer center from the ground up.
Now you're at NCI and you land there. Talk a little bit about like your early days there and kind of your journey through NCI.
So NCI was really great. And that was one of those things that how even I got to NCI, because there was no books of where to apply except one book that tells you where to apply, but NCI was not part of the book.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to go to NCI. So I picked up the phone and I called NCI. I said, I'm interested in coming, like, so why are you calling me, right?
Yeah.
And then somebody transferred me to another person, and then another person, and finally somebody picks up the phone and said, look, I'm looking to apply for a fellowship. And she said, I believe the fellowship time for application is done, but let's check. And then lo and behold, it was, and I applied. Yeah. So anyway, so that was a different story. But NCI was really great. NCI again is one of the major fundamental, and again, NIH, all fundamental organizations that this country had developed that is unmatched. Not only unmatched in the world, but it's unmatched even in anything that this country developed, to be honest. The amount of progress to human life and health that NIH has put forward over the past many years is something that is fundamental. And this is an institution that has to continue and has to be supported, and it has to be expanded even. So NCI was really great. I had a great group of colleagues. The amount of knowledge that you gain from the attendings and researchers that are there is unmatched by any level. People are highly experts in their area of expertise. But more importantly, because it's NIH and because it's government, people are there for one purpose: to do what they love to do. And all of them are highly sophisticated scientists, very accomplished, and most of them started things that never started outside. So, but because of that, then you are really amongst collection of brains that are great, and you can not only do your research, you learn also oncology, but also if you need anything, it's a matter of walking few steps, knocking on somebody's door and say, look, I'm looking to understand or learn this. What do you think? So NCI was fabulous as in my fellowship, and I've learned a lot. I've learned how to do research in real way continuously. I've learned how to do clinical research, also not only basic research. And as a clinician, I would say I developed my early formative year of being the definition of a clinician-scientist.
Cool.
Which means both a person who can do basic research, learn how to do basic research and explore ideas in basic research, but also how to translate this into clinical trials. And this is what I tried to do in my years during fellowship, is to try to combine this. because you look backward and say, what are the knowledge that I collected? And if I did medical school and now I'm doing research, is it possible to combine them? And few people do that. Now, some people decide, no, I'm just going to go and do basic research, right? Some people decide, no, I'm just going to do clinical research. But I decided really to utilize everything I had to be able to do both, to do the research in the lab and then translate it into clinic and conduct clinical trials. So, and that was very fulfilling by all measures. It was great because you can do things in the lab and then see patients receiving that treatment and some benefit from it. And again, in an environment of NCI that is built to encourage research and built on the principles of and the foundations of medical exploration. So I can't tell you how wonderful that experience was, at least during my fellowship.
Very cool. And it sounded like you had a very unique kind of like Venn diagram kind of practice and philosophy. Would you say that like, and these are broad strokes, but the basic research and then the clinical research folks are siloed and there needs to be more folks who kind of are able to bridge the gap?
The answer to that is yes. And this is why a place like NIH or NCI is a phenomenally great place to learn how to develop both, because this institution has been built on the premise that basic research and clinical outlet is one. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that you see when you go into NIH is how the basic research laboratories are next to the clinic, which is great. And most of the people there that are doing research are also basic scientists. So it really an environment that teaches you how to think in a way that is merged. So I think that trained me to when we do when we do basic research, when we do fundamental discoveries, and this is what we're doing now, and this is what we reach this level, is to have in mind, how could this eventually be translated into patient benefit? Now, I'm not saying that the fundamental basic research by itself is not valuable. It's more than valuable, right? And many people do it in a unbelievable way. The way I have grown up in the field is not only to discover basic science findings, but also to have in mind, always in the back of my mind, not only, okay, I'm going to discover this molecule or we're going to discover this mechanism, but then immediately during that discovery and with the team is how can we translate this mechanism or this discovery into a potential drug or an approach that could be given to patients. And I think those 4 years, at least 4 or 5 years of formation that I had during my fellowship at NCI really formulated that in me, in the presence of brilliant people around me, and how you do that. So I developed my first protocol when I was a second year fellow, which was like a cancer vaccine protocol, which was, again, cancer vaccine was not even on the map. It was starting to develop. So this is why I would say those years were forming years in really learning how to do research, conducting very valuable research, but more importantly, how to merge my two personalities together, my two things that I've learned during the years together and make it one.
Very cool. And I know, I think it was around this time, I believe you got involved with the FDA and also the King Hussein Cancer Center. I guess chronologically, how did that kind of...
So I was at NCI, I finished my fellowship and I started on the faculty at NCI, on the staff. And then it was, I think within that period, after I finished my fellowship and I was on the faculty, I think 2 or 3 years later or 4 years later, this King Hussein Cancer Center started, where the King of Jordan, King Hussein, was being treated at Mayo, and the National Cancer Institute and the presidents were involved in that. And he wanted to build a cancer center in Jordan So that's how it was. He asked the president or the NCI director to see if they can find someone to go to Jordan. That was probably, I forget the exact year, but that was when I was asked by the NCI director if I would be willing to go to Jordan and develop the cancer center.
Very cool. So were you splitting time, or did you end up relocating back to Jordan?
So, no, I actually relocated in Jordan. I was sent by NIH, by HHS, to Jordan, and I was there as a diplomat with the U.S. Embassy, and I relocated there. But this is why I smiled when you said you're splitting your time. I kept my research operation at NCI.
Cool. So
I was developing the cancer center, and I was meeting with the lab on Skype.
Yeah.
Skype. So that was but I was going back and forth twice a month. But my main residence was there as on site to develop the cancer center.
Very cool. Can you? I mean, that's like talk about a new big initiative. Can you talk about launching a cancer center?
Yeah, I mean, look. So this was really an unbelievable experience, a really beautiful experience. So there was a cancer center. The cancer center was not functioning very well. The King of Jordan asked the president if he can find someone to go and really develop it from the ground up. So I've done assessment to the cancer center over a few months, and we identified the gaps. Also, there was a chairman of the board there who's a Princess Gita, was really phenomenal, and she was involved in this at that time because it took us time to decide to go. But then when I started working there, it was a look. I used to tell people I wake up in the morning with dreams that are I'm in a ship with 6 million holes in it, and I was running from one hole to another to just cover.
Yeah,
it was an amazing experience. Really, very great experience. It was a complete restructuring, reforming, and rebuilding the center. I was helped tremendously by the team that I recruited, most of them from the US, to be with me. I was helped tremendously by the people that were there, and of course by the board, the government, and His Majesty the King. But so the beginning, John, what we wanted to do is to really develop the cancer centers to a level to become a cancer center at a level of US cancer centers. So the idea was how I can do that. Going there by myself without, it was not, I mean, again, NCI said, go. I said, fine.
Figure it out. Figure it out.
Figure it out. So it wasn't like, okay, fine. Yeah, well.
Yeah.
I think I developed it based on multiple different principles. One is to develop a nucleus of experts around me. So I had to hire really good, talented, brilliant people that are, again, from the region, Jordanian, Palestinian, whoever, and bring them all together and put them around. And second, depend on the great minds that exist there. So it was not a straightforward process, right? Because you need to really take everything, put it out, and develop from the ground up. So we did. We actually worked, and plus I started a lot of connections with institutions in the US. Of course, the NCI was there to help if needed. And it was a very, very interesting and learning and growing process. It took us 3 years, and we got the center from where it was to an institution that got accredited by the Joint Commission.
Cool.
Which is the same accreditation process that goes into the US. And it became the best cancer center in the Middle East, and it became the referral cancer center for 7 countries.
Wow.
So it was really amazing. The Minister of Health at that time mentioned to our HHS secretary that single-handedly the project lifted Jordan healthcare, the whole national healthcare system in logs. So after we got it accredited, multiple other institutions got accredited just because they start learning and we started teaching how to do it. So yeah, it was a very great, I mean, I'll be happy to answer any questions specific, but it was a very, very good experience, very rewarding experience. And before we went there, a lot of the people that used to be able to leave the country to get cancer care used to leave. Majority of people did not have an outlet for cancer care. The mortality rate for kids with leukemia was extremely high. Within a year and a half, it became cure rate remission almost 90+%. And some of the other diseases were not even available. Therapy was not available. Now, very rarely anybody leaves the country to get care because they all get care there. Plus, as I mentioned, 7 other countries send people there. Patients. So
that's amazing. And I think about just broadly speaking, how do you start something from scratch in a region that I'll take it out of the kind of cancer center kind of domain. But when I think about what makes Silicon Valley, and how do you recreate those kinds of areas and regions, it's such a multifaceted kind of multivariate initiative. Because you talk about you got to have governmental support, you got to have the talent, you got to raise the bar enough to the point where it's just okay, we got a good foundation, and then we can work from there. So I'm I guess when you think about the success of the King Hussein Cancer Center, if there were some key pillars, obviously it sounds like personnel is very important. What were the key pillars to standing it up and getting to the point of accreditation?
That's a great question. I think, and I'll tell you, it definitely has major pillars that you might think of or not think of. So one is clear talent nucleus. You can't do it by yourself. There's no way that you can do it by yourself. So clear talent nucleus that you have to put together. Second, you need to build support, because this is a change in culture. And change in culture requires support because people will fight you.
Yeah.
So that's very important. But it is critical, though, for this particular point, is to explain why you're doing what you're doing. Because you cannot just go there and do it and say, this is how I think about it. And more importantly, John, is to show the benefit of it. Now, you're going to have lots of naysayers, right? When you do any change in culture. I'm not talking about that particular project in general, but these are the things that you learn and you use in your career when you move forward. But you need to do things that, one, explain why you're doing what you're doing, and second, do it fast, by the way. You need to
yeah.
Very fast.
Yeah.
Before people know how to respond to it.
Yeah.
But then show the benefit and explain the benefit and highlight and market the benefit. This third pillar is usually when you do these kind of things, the naysayers are way more than the yaysayers. Can you do something? No, how are you thinking that you're going to be doing this?
Yeah.
Why did you even waste your time and go there to do that? I've heard that again and again and again. Actually, His Majesty the King, once he had he had an interview on television sometimes, and he used that, like, a gesture in Arabic says, like, no, is that everybody would tell you, no, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. But that's the case. So, but I'm not saying about that particular issue. Any
Yeah.
project you do in life, that's the usual case. Like, are you sure you want to do something like this? So the third pillar is really listen to your capability, ability, and more importantly, to your heart and those kind of things. If you can do it, just do it. Don't listen to the naysayers. And don't let anyone tell you that you cannot do this thing, especially if you're putting your mind to it. And then the fourth thing is make sure that people that you're working with absolutely understand and appreciate the mission. These are four very critical points that to build something from the ground up, and more importantly, if you want to build it with a change of culture, which is more difficult, is that these are critical factors. Have expertise, explain what you're doing, get the people on the mission and believe in the mission. And by the way, those that don't believe in the mission, they should not be there. You keep those that believe in the mission. And then finally, don't let people put you down.
That's amazing, because like I was like thinking about that too. I love also the look at the sub tip of go fast, like, because I think culture, like change management and like managing culture is like, it's an art and a science. It's like, it can be really hard, but it can make or break it, it can make or break any initiative. So I love hearing that, especially with something so ambitious as starting a cancer center. It's like the tenets stay true. Like I can see that in company building as well. And it reminds me, you're talking about like how your father had the kind of logical why behind the what.
That's right.
Kind of, it carries all the way.
But this is why I'm saying all these kind of things that you build, you take on the way, it helps you a lot. One thing, though, that is critical in building any institution, including starting with King Hussein Cancer Center, is appreciating what you don't know. This is critical because you don't know what you don't know. And the mitigation to that is, one, to hire the best people that they know way, way more than you do in anything. And second, to make sure that you knock on every door to ask questions. Just ask.
Yeah.
Before I went to build the cancer center, I actually rotated on 12 cancer centers in the US and talked with the directors of those cancer centers. Most of them are my friends, but I took a flight.
Yeah.
Went there. I went to Seattle. I went to Mississippi. I went to New York. So I literally met with every cancer center that I know and just brainstormed with them, right? Because you'll learn. So the lesson is get the best people, but more importantly, knock on doors and ask questions, even if you don't know what to ask. Just get people to talk, because you will discover lots of things that you will learn, and then you can start building on top of them, right? But that's really critical.
That's so cool. That's freaking awesome. And I think too, it's just like, I love that. I love that kind of mentality, because I think you can always take, it's like it's osmosis. You can kind of just like take learnings wherever and then you start figuring out what aspects of this might work in Jordan versus, in New York versus Seattle. There's different cultures, like also as well in the Pacific Northwest versus like in like New York City. So that those are different. But that sounds like an awesome journey. And it sounds like, as this thing is now stood up and it's like improved healthcare, like multiples. When did you know it was time to leave? And did you know what was up next after that?
So that's a great question. So my intent was two things. One, to build the team, and really the team there is just amazing. So I had the best team that you can ever have. And I felt that the team is there. But the most important thing from my perspective was that we needed to get the accreditation. the Joint Commission accreditation. So we got the Joint Commission accreditation in, I think, March, and I left in March of that year. The reason is because two things. One, it is not the accreditation the process was. It wasn't meant to be getting that piece of paper. It's developing the process. It's the journey to it. It's for people to understand, learn, and realize what it takes to build and maintain a quality healthcare institution. So every single employee was engaged with that process on purpose. And that was my intent, right? We engaged literally every single employee. We had weekly meetings. We had monthly all-hand meetings, all about this process, just for people to understand that a high-level healthcare institution delivery system requires that mentality. So it was like as if you're taking an IV every day with that process. So my job or my intent was, if I get this accreditation, I can hit three birds in one stone. One, people learned the process and, more importantly, absorbed it, and finally got something that recognized that that is it. The second is, when you get that, you need to maintain it every 3 years. And if you don't maintain it, it's a big problem. So people now know that it needs to be maintained. Third, during that process, the leadership that was there evolved to the degree that they became really a team, and there were leaders and there were people to take over that are really great. And they probably did a much better job than I did, but they're fantastic. So I think these are the three principles. The last one evolved as we go. But again, the process involving them, putting them in leadership position to reach a level, because there is a goal, right? There's a goal. You need to catch that goal and get a check. It's not like, okay, great, we built a team. So this is why that accreditation was important, because it taught everyone what it means, and it put the center at a place where it cannot go down now. It has to be maintained. Of course, they were able to take it even more up because they have that capability, they have the spirit, and they're fantastic. But that was my intent, and this is what happened. So it was a period of detail to build it and do it. And I had from the beginning a thought, at least we were thinking of 3 years, and I wanted to accomplish that in 3 years. And that was exactly what's the case. So we were able to accomplish it in 3 years and then moved on.
Sounds like a very busy 3 years. Like that.
It was an amazing 3 years.
Not in a bad connotation.
No, absolutely. It was an amazing 3 years. But again, it was all those 3 years that are up and down and some naysayers and some people. But that's part of a process. That's part of a process when you build something that's completely new, that's completely against the grain, that's completely unusual. And sometimes you step on foot. You know, that's fun.
Yeah, it's life. That's life.
That's life. Exactly.
Yeah.
But the good news is that at the end of a process, you see a product, right? You see that product. And again, the proof in the pudding. The center now is really the best place or the best healthcare institution in the Middle East. So
that's freaking amazing.
Not even one of the best in the world.
And two things that stood out to me is, I think, and I'm still working on this, but standing up organizations where there's kind of if I were to step back for a moment where people can just take it to the next level, even without me there, I think our team is I'm continuously trying to empower the next kind of guard of the company as young employees come in. How do we train them up, get them to the point where they can start running with it and being creative? And I can imagine it was a similar exercise at the cancer center. It's just okay, you guys know the process, you know the fundamentals, and now it's your time to carry the torch and run with it. So there's so many lessons that when it comes to building a self-propagating organization and initiative, about like empowering and teaching folks how to kind of run the process and then get creative with it on top. And the other aspect that kind of stood out to me is not only explaining the why behind the what, but it's like showing it, like literally showing the impact. Because I think sometimes when, especially as organizations get larger, you can start to lose sight of the impact because there's like multiple degrees of separation. And then you start to feel like, how am I even connected to this kind of, 3 degrees of separation? But it's always important as leaders to like bring it back and be like, hey, this was because you did this. This is what the
very
end
important
product.
John, very important. That's critical, actually. This is why in every institution that I led, we have those meetings that you show people what their effort led to. That is really critical because that would link their hard work to a product, and it means progress. The other thing is the first point that you mentioned is those talented people. I mean, this is one of those things that you really need to be courageous when you lead institutions like that, right? Because there are cultures. How can you change the culture into a meritocracy culture rather into, hello, can you take my cousin?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So these are the things, and there are ways that you develop as you go, you invent as you go. There's no book, right? There's no book that you say, okay, well, where's that? Tell you how to do that.
Yeah.
But you invent those techniques and you make techniques to make sure that only people are hired based on meritocracy. You're not going to offend anyone. But by the way, yes, he can definitely apply or she can definitely apply. But there's this process of doing a test at the beginning. And then if they pass that test, then they'll go into interviews, and those interviews are done in separate rooms. And so all these kind of things that says, well, it's not my fault. It's just, so these are the things that you embed within those kind of things to be able to reach the level where you just mentioned, which is that first thing is to have those best people that can carry it further, because that's critical.
Very cool.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Biotech Startups podcast with Samir Khleif. In part 3, Samir shares what it was like leading a national reform effort at the FDA, building new oncology programs in Georgia, and navigating the shift from government to academia. He also talks about recruiting mission-driven talent, spinning out IP for the first time, and how one scientific breakthrough and mindset shift led to the founding of Georgiamune. If you're enjoying the series, follow the show, leave us a review, and share it with a friend. See you next time. The Biotech Startups podcast is produced by Exceeder. Don't want to miss an episode? Search for the Biotech Startups podcast wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. Exceeder provides research labs with equipment leases on founder-friendly terms to support paths to exceptional outcomes. To learn more, visit our website www.exceeder.com. On behalf of the team here at Exceeder, thanks for listening. The Biotech Startups podcast provides general insights into the life science sector through the experiences of its guests. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast is at the user's own risk. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not the views of Exceeder or sponsors. No reference to any product, service, or company in the podcast is an endorsement by Exceeder or its guests.